41 years of marriage, and I learned what she really thought of me standing in the back hallway of a restaurant that still had our names on a reservation from 1987. I wasn't supposed to be there early. That was the whole thing. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that place until 7 o'clock, and it was barely 5:30 when the manager, a man named Gus, who had been seating us at the same corner table since the Clinton administration, grabbed my elbow the moment I walked through the side entrance and pulled me toward the kitchen without saying a single word. I said, "Gus, what's?" He shook his head. Just once. Something in his eyes made me stop talking. He pushed open the door to the dry storage room behind the prep station, gestured inside, and said quietly, "Stay here, please. Don't make a sound." Then he looked at me the way you look at someone when you're about to do them a kindness they didn't ask for and aren't sure they want. "Trust me, Mr. Aldrich." I stood there among boxes of dried pasta and canned tomatoes, and I didn't move. I heard her voice before I heard anything else. My wife. 41 years. The woman who held my hand in the emergency room when our youngest stopped breathing for 40 seconds at 3 weeks old. The woman who drove 4 hours in a snowstorm to bring me soup when I was stuck at a job site in Harrisburg. That voice. And she was laughing. Not a nervous laugh, not a polite laugh. She was genuinely, comfortably, completely at ease. The way you laugh with someone you've known a long time, someone you trust, someone you've chosen. And she was talking about me like I was already gone. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense without the 41 years. My name is Walt. No, sorry, my name is Ted. Theodore Aldrich. I'm 63 years old. I spent 32 years building a commercial contracting business from a 2-man operation in a rented garage in Allentown, Pennsylvania, into a firm with 47 employees and contracts across 6 states. My wife Beverly and I started dating when I was 20 and she was 19. We got married 2 years later in our parents' backyard in Lancaster because we couldn't afford a venue. She was the one who talked me into starting the business. I was working for someone else, decent job, safe salary, and she sat across from me at our kitchen table one night and said, "You're too good to be building other people's dreams." I believed her. I always believed her. We built Aldrich and Associates together in the way married couples build things, not by sharing the desk, but by sharing the weight. She raised our 2 kids through the years I was working 60-hour weeks. She learned to read a balance sheet so she could talk me through the bad quarters. When we were on the edge of losing everything in 2009, she refinanced the house without flinching. "We'll rebuild," she said. "We always do." We did. By the time I turned 60, the business was healthy. We talked for years about what the next chapter looked like. A smaller house maybe, travel, time with the grandchildren we hoped were coming. That was the plan, the shared plan, the one I thought we both wanted. The first time I noticed something was different was last spring. She started taking calls outside, started having lunch with someone I didn't know, an old friend, she said, someone from the gym. She seemed lighter around them, whoever they were, and heavier around me. Not angry, not cold, just distant in a way I couldn't quite name. I told myself it was the adjustment. The business transition was coming. Change makes people restless. I told myself a lot of things. Our 41st anniversary was June 14th. We had a tradition, Carmine's, same corner table, every single year. I was going to give her a bracelet I'd had made from her grandmother's watch chain, the one she'd lost the original clasp on 12 years ago. I'd found a jeweler in Philadelphia who could work with the metal. I'd been carrying it in my coat pocket for 3 weeks. That afternoon I drove to the restaurant early because I wanted to talk to Gus about a small thing. I'd asked him to have a single white rose on the table, her favorite, and I wanted to confirm it was taken care of. I parked around back, came through the side entrance like I'd done 100 times. I was smiling when I walked in. That was when Gus grabbed my arm. She was sitting in the dining room with a man named, I didn't know his name yet, but I would later find out, someone who had come into our lives through the business, not an employee. A consultant she'd hired 8 months ago, apparently, to help her understand the company's asset structure. I didn't know that either. Not yet. I stood in the dark of that storage room and I listened. "He's slowing down," she was saying. "I can see it. He forgets things. He repeated the same story about the Harrisburg job 3 times last month. I did repeat that story. I remember. I was tired. Is there documentation? The man asked. Not yet, but I've talked to someone. A physician who does these evaluations. He says with the right framing, forgetfulness, confusion, trouble with complex decisions, it's not hard to establish diminished capacity. Once that's in place, the power of attorney shifts. I stopped breathing. And the business? He asked. Once the POA transfers, the operating decisions come to me. I've already spoken to an attorney about restructuring the ownership. It's cleaner than a divorce. In Pennsylvania, if he's declared incapacitated, I manage the estate. His share, the company, all of it. No division, no negotiation. It just transfers. There was a pause. He won't fight it, she said. He trusts me completely. That's the thing about Ted. He always has. I had my hand flat against the wall to keep from falling down. And the timeline? The man asked. I want it done before the end of the year, maybe sooner. She said it like she was talking about a home renovation. I stood there in the dark with 41 years pressing on my chest, and I listened to my wife of 4 decades describe the legal mechanism by which she planned to take everything I had built and remove me from the life I thought we shared, not by leaving me, but by reclassifying me, not as an ex-husband, as an incompetent. And I did not make a sound. Gus found me 20 minutes later still in that room. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, I'm sorry, Mr. Aldrich. I didn't know what to do. I saw her come in early. I recognized the situation. I'm sorry. I asked him how long this had been happening. He said she'd been meeting that man here for about 3 months. Always on off hours, always at a back table. He'd been watching it and not knowing what his place was to say anything. When he saw me walk in through the side door tonight, he made a decision. I shook his hand. I couldn't speak. I left through the back. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for a long time. Long enough for the dinner hour to start and the lot to fill up around me. Long enough for the sun to finish setting. I didn't cry. I want to tell you I didn't cry, but I did. Not for long. There's a particular kind of grief that doesn't have a name. Not the grief of losing someone to death, and not the grief of a marriage that simply wears out. It's the grief of a rewrite. Of having the story you've been living in reclassified as something else. Of being the last one to know what it was. I drove home. She wasn't there yet. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark and I thought clearly, maybe more clearly than I had in years. I called my attorney at 8:30 that evening. His name is a private matter now, but he's a good man, and he picked up. I told him what I'd heard. All of it. Every word I could remember. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Ted, don't touch anything. Don't move money. Don't sign anything. Don't change your behavior at all. Act like you know nothing. Call me tomorrow morning first thing, and we'll start the process. What process? I asked. The process of making sure that what she's describing is legally impossible before she can make a single move. I went back home and I waited for my wife to return. She came home around 9, said the dinner with her friend had run long, apologized, asked if I was hungry. She was warm, familiar, completely ordinary. She kissed my cheek and asked about my day. I said my day was fine. I said I'd been thinking about the anniversary, about what a long road it had been. She smiled and said, 41 years, can you believe it? I said I could hardly believe it. She went upstairs. I sat in the kitchen for another hour. Over the next 6 weeks, I did not change anything about my daily behavior. I still had dinner with her. I still watched the same shows on the same couch. I still said good night and good morning and asked how she slept. I repeated a story about the Harrisburg job once because I genuinely forgot I'd told it before, and I watched her face carefully when I did, and I saw, just for a fraction of a second, something calculating behind her eyes. A quick note being taken, filed away. Meanwhile, with my attorney's guidance, I did the following. I had the business formally appraised by an independent firm. I had my personal physician, a doctor I've trusted for 20 years, not someone with any connection to Beverly or her plan, conduct a complete cognitive evaluation. I scored well. The documentation was thorough and dated. I had the company's ownership structure reviewed and, in accordance with the operating agreement I'd held since day one, had the controlling interest formally re-registered in a way that required two-party consent for any major transaction. I also had a forensic accountant quietly review our joint accounts. What he found took me another day to absorb. Over 14 months, Beverly had been making transfers, never large enough to trigger automatic alerts, always under amounts that would require explanation, into an account I didn't know existed. The total came to a little over $220,000. I had been funding her exit for over a year. My attorney said this changes the nature of what we're doing. This isn't just a preemptive defense, this is evidence. I asked him what we should do with it. He said, we wait. We let her make a move, and when she does, everything you've built becomes untouchable. The move came on a Wednesday morning in August. She sat down across from me at breakfast and told me she wanted to talk about some concerns she'd had. She had a folder, actual printed papers in an actual folder, which she set on the table between us. She said she'd been worried about my memory, about some of the decisions I'd made recently at work. She named 2 or 3 specific instances, minor things, reclassified and reframed, and said she thought it might be a good idea for me to see a doctor. Just to rule things out, she said. She had a name. The name was the same physician she'd mentioned in that restaurant. She was patient. She was kind. She was devastatingly convincing. If I hadn't heard what I heard, I might have wondered if she was right. I looked at her across our kitchen table, the same table where she'd told me I was too good to build other people's dreams, and I said very quietly, Beverly, I already saw a doctor. She blinked. 6 weeks ago, a full cognitive evaluation. I scored normally across all measures. The report is dated, it's filed, and my attorney has a copy. She said, your attorney? Yes. He also has copies of the bank transfer records from the joint accounts, 14 months worth. I set my hands flat on the table. And the operating agreement for the company has been updated. Any significant transfer of interest requires my co-signature and 30 days written notice. She didn't move. I also spoke to Gus, I said. He was willing to provide a written account of what he observed and overheard over those 3 months. He didn't want to, but he said what's right is right. The kitchen was very quiet. I said, I'm not angry. I want you to know that. I'm something else. I don't have the right word for it yet. But I am not going to let you reclassify me. I am not going to let you have me declared incapable in the state where I started a company from nothing and employed 47 people and paid taxes for 32 years. I built this. I am clear-minded and I am capable, and I will not disappear quietly so that you don't have to have a hard conversation. She started to say something. I held up my hand, not unkindly. If you want a divorce, Beverly, we'll have that conversation, with attorneys present, as 2 adults who made something together and now need to figure out how to end it fairly. I paused. But what you were planning, that doesn't happen. It's already closed. She looked at the folder on the table for a long moment. Then she said, how did you know? I said, it doesn't matter. The divorce took 11 months. It was difficult and expensive, and there were days when I drove to work and couldn't remember if I'd eaten breakfast. And for a disorienting second, I'd wonder if she had been right, if something was wrong with me, if the loneliness of the last year had been quietly reshaping me in ways I couldn't see. But then I'd remember I'd had that checked thoroughly. I was fine, just tired. Just 63 and learning what betrayal does to a person's sense of time. The forensic accounts was central to the settlement. The $220,000 came back. Her claim to the business was limited by the restructured operating agreement. She retained her share of the equity we'd built jointly, which was fair. She had built it with me, whatever else was true. That part I didn't fight. The man from the restaurant was not a factor in the legal proceedings. He stepped back early on. I don't know what she told him. I don't think it matters. My attorney was extraordinary. My daughter, she lives in Portland now. She has a daughter of her own who is 4 and calls me Poppy. She flew out twice during the proceedings. She didn't say much. She just sat with me in the evenings and we ate takeout and watched baseball, and sometimes that was enough. My son is still working through what he feels about all of it. He's closer to his mother, always has been, and I understand that. I don't require him to choose sides. He called on my birthday, and we talked for 40 minutes about his job and his garden and completely avoided the subject. And when we hung up, I thought, this is what we're doing now. This is fine. It will be different later. It's been a year and 2 months since that morning in the kitchen. I still drive past Carmine sometimes. I haven't been back inside. I might eventually. Gus texted me last month to say he hoped I was well. I wrote back, doing better, working. Thanks for what you did. He wrote back, I almost didn't. I'm glad I did. I kept the bracelet. It's still in my coat pocket. The same coat, the same pocket. I keep meaning to take it out and put it somewhere. I don't know why I haven't. Maybe because I made it for someone real, for a real person I really loved, and putting it away feels like reclassifying something else, deciding it doesn't count. I'm not ready to do that yet. I still run the business. We had a good year, best since 2019. 2 new contracts in the Mid-Atlantic, 1 out of Charlotte that's going to keep us busy through next winter. I still walk the job sites. I still know all my employees' names. I still know what I built and why I built it and what it cost. There are things I've learned at 63 that I wish I'd known earlier. That love and loyalty are not the same thing. That the people who know you longest don't always know you best. That silence is not the same as peace, and that patience, real patience, the kind that holds still and waits, is not passive. It's the hardest thing there is. And I've learned this. The most dangerous assumption in a long marriage is the assumption that because someone has seen you at your worst, they must be on your side. I trusted completely. That wasn't a flaw. I still believe in trust. But I also believe now in documentation, in counsel, in the quiet maintenance of your own legal standing, not out of suspicion, out of self-respect, out of the recognition that the life you built belongs to you, and no one else gets to decide when it ends or what it becomes. I'm not bitter. I want to be clear about that. Bitterness is just grief that forgot where it was going. I'm still here, still building, still mine. That's enough. I keep thinking about the bracelet. It's still in my coat pocket. I've moved it from the winter coat to the fall jacket and back again, and I still haven't put it anywhere permanent. But Jula in Philadelphia spent 3 weeks working with metal from my wife's grandmother's watch chain, metal Beverly had carried the meaning of for decades, and I had it made into something new because I believed we were still building things together. That's the part that stays with me, not the betrayal itself. The fact that I was still trying to add to something she had already decided to take apart. There's a cause and effect to all of it that I've had a long time to sit with now. Beverly made choices. Each one led to the next. The secret meetings. The account I didn't know about. The physician she'd already contacted. None of that happened overnight. It accumulated, and my own choices accumulated too in the opposite direction. I trusted without verifying. I assumed that shared history meant shared intention. I confused familiarity with loyalty. Those weren't moral failures on my part, but they were a kind of intellectual laziness. A willingness to stop paying attention, because paying attention felt like suspicion, and suspicion felt like a betrayal of the life we'd built. What Gus did at that restaurant was a small act with enormous consequences. He could have looked the other way. Most people would have. He made a decision in about 10 seconds that changed the entire shape of what happened to me. I've thought about that a lot. About what it takes to do the right thing when doing nothing is so much easier. He didn't know how I'd react. He didn't know if I'd be grateful or angry, or if I'd even believe him. He just knew what was happening wasn't right, and he acted on that knowledge. That's not a complicated virtue. It's just an honest one, and it's rarer than it should be. The thing I had to reckon with, the thing I'm still reckoning with, is that intelligence without integrity doesn't protect you. Beverly is a smart woman. The plan she was constructing was sophisticated. She understood Pennsylvania law. She understood the company structure. She understood exactly which pressure points to use. But she applied all of that towards something that required her to look at a man she'd shared 41 years with and decide he was an obstacle. That's not intelligence in any meaningful sense. That's just strategy in the service of something hollow. And what I had to find in myself, what I had to build almost from scratch in those 6 quiet weeks between the restaurant and the morning at the kitchen table, was something different. Not anger, not revenge, just steadiness. The capacity to hold what I knew, not react to it, and move carefully towards something solid. That's harder than it sounds when what you're holding is that heavy. I wasn't naturally built for silence under pressure. I'm a contractor by trade. I solve problems by naming them out loud and putting people on them. Sitting across from my wife at dinner and saying, "How was your day?" while knowing what I knew required a kind of discipline I didn't know I had. I'm not proud of needing the crisis to find it, but I'm glad I found it. My daughter asked me once after it was all over if I regretted anything. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. I said I regret that I stopped paying attention, not to her behavior. I'm not sure I could have seen what she was planning, but to myself, to what I actually needed, what I actually felt, whether the life I was living was still the life I'd chosen or just the life I'd accumulated. That kind of attention isn't selfishness, it's maintenance. And I let it go because I thought the work was done. The work is never done. I'm 63 years old and I'm starting over in some ways that are hard and some ways that are quietly, unexpectedly good. The business had its best year since 2019. My granddaughter calls me Poppy. I still walk the job sites. I still know what I built. The bracelet is still in my pocket. Maybe it stays there for a while longer. That's okay. Some things take time to figure out what they are now.